Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in today at today's webinar. Everyone, I'm sure, don't need an introduction to Datuk Dr. Selvam. Datuk, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, all of you all. Thank you for joining the series of webinars on senescence and how you rejuvenate yourself. Today's topic will be on autophagy or self-eating. Okay, we talked a lot about energy because if you look at what happens to us, whether you look at this slide, I put it for the sake of interest and information, and if you are able to digest. For those who are spiritually inclined, you will believe that there is no beginning, no end. It is just a continuum, and it all revolves around energy. And we have touched upon energy, especially the mitochondrial energy on many lectures. That's what we are. We are just forms of energy. It could be also mitochondria generates ATP, and maintaining mitochondrial health is absolutely critical for good health and for healthy aging. But there could be other forms of energy that we are not sure or we have not found out yet. One of that could be the energy from sunlight, because we could actually be photosynthetic like plants. They have mitochondria, we have mitochondria. So there could be many other ways that, our body generates energy. But the crux is of aging healthily, preventing disease, and helping those who are sick all depends on how much energy you create, how much energy you conserve, how much you waste. So it's about energy that decides your repair and regeneration. So energy, repair, regeneration. If we address these three pillars of health, then you slow down aging and you prevent many of the diseases. And most diseases, if you look, it all evolves around the same thing. When you have less energy because you overspend energy in any way, especially by eating the wrong food, you have less ability or less energy to repair. When you have less repair in your body, you cannot rejuvenate. Yeah. So life is an equilibrium state between the synthesis and how much proteins you degrade. So healthy proteins will be maintained, unhealthy proteins, which are often called the misfolded proteins, I'll explain. So if you maintain how much protein you make, how much protein you degrade, and maintain an equilibrium, then it is a state of health, because most of what we are is made of proteins, your hormones, your enzymes. So it's very important to maintain a homeostasis of this. This is a difference between organisms and machine. You are able to repair and rejuvenate self. You're not a machine. Recycling is essential for life as an important ability for survival against starvation. So if you look at most diseases and consider how people lived thousands of years ago, the food was available at certain periods of time, and sometimes it was plenty. So there was either eating or feasting when there was plenty of food. But there was also time when the food was not available or very scarce. So there was fasting. These two, feasting and fasting, was always part of living. Unlike now, we have abundance of food and we indulge ourselves in overeating. We have too many meals a day. And if you look at the number of hours, actually when one does not consume food is less. The hours we spend eating, digesting, and assimilating the food is much more than the state of fasting. Each meal you eat, it takes about 6 hours to 8 hours for you to digest, assimilate, and detoxify, and the whole process. But before the end of that period of time, we are already eating the next meal. And in between, you have snacks, then Malaysian style of supper, 24 hours restaurant. This is what we are going to talk about. So many of the chronic degenerative metabolic diseases that we see because of inflammation and even cancers are seen in epidemic proportions. And most of us who practice integrative medicine, we will realize that, it's being seen in younger generation. I just, this was a review of an 11-year-old girl from Johor today with malignant teratoma of the ovary, just 11 years. And she had surgery done. So the parents are torn apart whether to have chemo or not to have chemo. So they came to me and my answer was very simple. If you let the body heal, if you give an opportunity for the body to heal, it will repair and heal. Chemo is toxic. There's no opportunity for healing. So they have not gone for chemo. The girl is feeling better. The CA 19.9, which was elevated, has come down, but only by a few units. And I repeated the blood test. So the point I'm trying to make is, most of what happens to us is what we bring upon ourselves, and especially diet. So when I give my consultation, always emphasizes the first pillar of health, that's diet, which we'll also go through. So the conventional approach is time to change. Conventional approach offers very little healing, if at all. So we all need to approach diseases in a natural way and address it from the root cause. You need to identify the root cause. Orthomolecular means same molecules. That means only molecules that belongs to the body. Drugs are not molecules that the body is made of. So if you have proteostasis, the homeostasis between the cell synthesis and cell homeostasis within and outside cell, that decides. And this proteostasis, a state of homeostasis in protein synthesis and degradation, is autophagy, controlled largely by autophagy. So this evolves around your biological aging and fibrogenesis. As you age, you have more fibrogenesis, you age faster, so it becomes a vicious cycle. And autophagy can control. So there will be definition. I will touch upon what activates autophagy and what inhibits autophagy, what are the benefits, and how you can improve. So when you look at aging, it is characterized by accumulation of dysfunctional proteins inside the cells. It could also be accumulation of damaged organelles that disrupt the cellular homeostasis, causing progressive degeneration and cell death. And this results in cellular diseases. So aging is an accumulation of abnormal and misfolded proteins. About 30 to 40% of proteins that we synthesize can be misfolded. That means they are not the normal proteins that will be beneficial for us. These proteins need to be recognized. They have to be, first they have to be identified, then they have to be tagged. That is the baggage. Then this baggage has to be identified by certain other proteins that take these misfolded proteins into your cell with the process of autophagy or self-eating, so that they are degraded before they cause health issues. So the process of identifying, recognizing, tagging, and delivering these proteins is done by these misfolded proteins is performed by certain factors in the body, and then they are taken into the cell for autophagy. Failing to do so will be the cause for neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and ALS, and many more. So if you look at optimum health and aging, it starts at cellular energy. So you must have optimum cellular energy The emphasis should be how much energy you produce and how much you use it for repair and regeneration. If you use a lot of energy to digest the food you eat, then you have less energy for repair and regeneration. This decides how healthily you age and how fast you age and how healthy you are. So autophagy actually is a Greek word meaning self-eating. You eat yourself. But in order to eat yourself, okay, you cannot be eating food. This is the crux of autophagy. So the periods of fasting is essential for optimum autophagy function, fasting. So there are times of eating or feasting, there is time for fasting. It reuses the various cellular components, all the organelles, proteins, including proteins, lipids, to build new and healthier cells. This is different from apoptosis that we will see. So it's a major force stimulating autophagy is cellular stress. This is not your physical or psychological stress. Although physical stress can stimulate autophagy, not the psychological stress. But when I say cellular stress, it is nutrient deprivation or nutrient starvation. That means when you give less or very little or no food to the body will have time to recognize the abnormal proteins and organelles that are aging. They will be digested. The components will be reused to produce new healthy cells. This is autophagy. So stress induces changes for self-renewal and to maintain homeostasis. Now this stress, I should emphasize again, is nutrient deprivation or nutrient starvation. That means you are not going to be overeating and you are not going to be spending your days 24 hours a day, many hours of eating and digesting the food. I will address this as I go along so that you'll understand how to stimulate autophagy. So it's a survival promoting process. It also prolongs your life and restores health. So this is always a prevention, and the earlier we start, the healthier we will be. Autophagy revolves around lysosomes. Okay, so the essential function is to maintain homeostasis, promote health and longevity. Starving cells, that means the cells have no food to digest. There is no food to digest. So when you starve the cells, they degrade their own cellular materials. What happens during this time is to remove or degrade all the organelles inside the cell and recycle whatever that is necessary. Once you regenerate and build new cells, then you have less disease because there is less sick cells, less toxic buildup within the cells, and it does not become cancerous cells. So this is like having a new engine. You may choose to renew your engine now and then, or you may choose to live with an old engine that becomes of less use. The best benefit, one of the best benefits of autophagy or self-eating through starvation or nutrient deprivation is mitochondrial biogenesis. Remember, we talked about mitochondria, mitochondrial health, and mitochondrial dysfunction and diseases. And there was a long list of diseases associated with mitochondrial dysfunction, including possibly congenital anomalies, and almost all diseases. Even Michael Gonzalez addressed these, and Thomas Levy touched upon these. Almost all diseases can be linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. And I would like to emphasize here that the most important factor in mitochondrial dysfunction is still carbohydrate burning, the metabolism of carbohydrates that generates excessive free radicals. Burning good fats creates no free radicals, so no smoke. Carbohydrates metabolized by and in that process you create free radicals. The more carbohydrates you consume, more metabolism of carbohydrates, more free radicals, and the likelihood of mitochondrial damage and dysfunction. Of course, you can have nutrient deficiencies, especially magnesium, CoQ10, and hormones like thyroid hormones. But a lot of this can be avoided if you watch what you eat and how much you eat and when you eat. So metabolically active organs like liver, your kidneys, brain, and muscles particularly depend on autophagy to prevent accumulation of damaged mitochondria and proteins. If you look at many types of proteins like amyloid proteins, tau proteins, many proteins that cause various kinds of diseases, it's just an accumulation of these abnormal proteins because they have not been addressed. So if they accumulate to a certain extent, certain level, they cause disease. But you can prevent by starting to realize that your body needs to rest, stay away from food, at least for certain hours of the day. Okay. Now, all these organs, especially these organs, they carry certain proteins systems, and one of that would be the P62, and the other one is the ubiquitin proteasome, UPS system. Now, what the UPS system does is it recognizes abnormal proteins or misfolded proteins, and it tags them that this is the cargo that has to be recycled. Then the P62 acts as a substrate. So it takes the cargo, it can move between cytoplasm and nucleus. Okay, it takes the cargo and gives it to the autophagosome, which we will see, and for it to be degraded. So if all these systems are working well, then your cell will be healthy. If you overburden the system with too much of eating, then you will have problems. So the major driver for autophagy is cellular stress from nutrient deprivation.
Dato?
Again,
Sorry,
yes?
Dato. Can you enlarge the screen? The participants wants the screen larger. Can you go to the speakers set? Ah, yes. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So autophagy revolves around energy. I mentioned to you. So as long as you protect and maintain healthy mitochondria, your autophagy will proceed healthily. In order to maintain healthy mitochondria, besides the nutrients that we have looked at, besides the hormones that we have looked at, the emphasis should be on what you put in. So it is about carbs, especially the refined carbs and sugar. They are the ones who generate a lot of free radicals. And you also need sensory inputs. We discussed, actually I gave a lecture on signaling molecules during one of the SAHAMM conference. Of course, it was a very dry topic to many, and then it was also a very heavy topic. But I mentioned at that time that as you go along learning integrative medicine, functional medicine, you will realize that understanding this, some of these signaling molecules would be very important. So for those who have attended the advanced course, you will recognize AMPK, CERT1, and mTOR. I have some slides on AMPK and mTOR. CERT1 is your longevity gene, okay? And there must be sensory inputs, and you also have an effective signaling, and the signaling is by ATG. ATG is autophagy related genes. There are no specific genes for autophagy. It's not like you have a P53, a tumor suppressor gene. These are related genes, not specific genes. FOXO is another longevity gene. P53 is a tumor suppressing gene, but I put it in bracket that it can have a dual role. And I have a slide where I'll explain how it can be a tumor promoter or tumor suppressor. So the whole thing revolves around fasting and calorie restriction. Okay. So I mentioned there is a difference between apoptosis. Apoptosis is You take care of your body, just takes care of old and damaged cells. So it's of no use to you. So it's a suicide, cellular suicide. But this happens in aged and damaged cells. And of course, if you lose control of apoptosis, the cells don't die, and if they continue to grow, that can become cancer. But apoptosis involves cells that are already damaged, and in the process of lysis, they could generate inflammation. Whereas autophagy is a process whereby you prevent these cells from getting into that stage. So it's very important to recognize the difference. Autophagy just recognizes the proteins and misfolded proteins and all other lipid droplets that could become, could make the cells sick and cause disease. It's recognized, and those cells are actually recycled. The organelles are recycled. So there is a difference. So as I mentioned, no specific genes for autophagy. Growth factors and oxidative stress of free radicals regulate autophagy through mTOR. mTOR suppresses autophagy because mTOR is a signaling molecule that is necessary for growth, cell proliferation, and growth. Whereas AMPK is a signaling molecule that helps you to metabolize your food, your fat, your carbs. So one of the important signaling molecules to metabolize what we eat is AMPK. Whereas mTOR, which is stimulated by a lot of protein intake and other factors, that is for cell growth and proliferation. So cell growth and proliferation, when it's excessive, it could be associated with malignant transformation or cancer cell formation. Now, why this is important is as you age, you need AMPK to be more active and mTOR to be less active. mTOR needs to be active when you are in the younger age group, when in your adolescence, teens, adolescents, young adults, you are still growing. mTOR needs to be active. That's when you need protein synthesis, more protein synthesis. As you age, watching what you eat and watching how much you eat and when you eat is very important, because that is how you control your AMPK. And one of the reasons why AMPK is less active as you age is hypothyroidism. Thyroid hormone is very important to activate AMPK. That's why hypothyroid patients are metabolically less active and they feel tired and cold. So this is one of the main mechanisms by which thyroid hormones help you. And vitamin D3 regulates autophagy related genes. So this is another added benefit of optimizing vitamin D3. Please pay attention for those who can have your levels tested, because I hardly ever see one who has optimum levels. Majority are insufficient and or deficient. So the major roles of autophagy would be to recycle nutrients. So they generate new materials for synthesis of new cells, and they eliminate protein aggregates that I mentioned, proteins that have not been formed well from the beginning, organelles that are becoming sick before they become very sick, as well as invasive bacteria and viruses. Now, if you listen to your body, the body has a beautiful way of accelerating or activating autophagy when you are sick, simply by cutting down your appetite. This is what happens. Because the body wants to activate autophagy and it wants you to starve yourself. You lose appetite. Don't force yourself to eat when you're sick. So once autophagy is activated, you will get rid of the invasive, the viruses, bacteria, and parasites within the cells. So there are two types of clearances. We won't go into details of these. I mentioned to you that the ubiquitin and proteasome, the UPS pathway, is for short-lived proteins like your enzymes, digestive enzymes. The autophagy lysosome pathway, the ALP, is for long-lived proteins like your DNAs. So the UPS is the one that recognizes the misfolded proteins, then it labels the cargo and gives it to your P52. P52 takes it to the autophagosome. But both systems are important. There are three types of autophagy. One is macro autophagy, the other is micro autophagy, and then the chaperone mediated autophagy. So what is macro autophagy? I can't use my, I'm not sure whether I can use my, when I enlarge the screen, maybe. Okay. Now, macro autophagy starts with the process of initiation. Okay, nucleation, elongation, fusion, and degradation. So the first double layered membrane is from the endoplasmic reticulum. This is the initiation. Then it has to elongate and it becomes a complete autophagosome. Okay. Now, once this autophagosome, these are all the organelles and proteins and lipid droplets that need to be degraded. They are enveloped and then it fuses with the lysosome. And inside the autophagosome, autophagolysosome, the whatever that needs to be degraded will be degraded and they will be reused. Whereas the micro autophagy, I'll go through another slide, is direct engulfment. So there is no autophagosome. Chaperone mediated for short-lived proteins or other forms of proteins is actually, you need a chaperone. You need somebody to guide them. So this recognizes certain types of proteins and they are then guided to the lysosome associated membrane protein, the membrane proteins at the cell surface. Then they are guided into the lysosome. So there are two types, LAMP2A and LAMP2C. So this is chaperone mediated. You need somebody to take the misfolded proteins, put them through these membranes, associated proteins, for them to be degraded. So these are the three different types of autophagy. So macro autophagy starts with the formation of double layered membrane from the endoplasmic reticulum. So the health of ER is very important. So first is isolation, then the targeted cytoplasmic constituents are engulfed. So it's elongation and engulfment, and once it is formed, it is fused with the lysosome, then the process of degradation takes place. So this is another diagram that you can see. Some of these would be a little bit complicated. You need the ULK1 and 2 complex. This complex actually fuses with the autophagy related genes, ATGs, and there are other essential proteins initiating the autophagosome membrane formation, nucleation, expansion, and engulfment of all the necessary materials to be degraded, fusion with lysosome, and then it's degraded and recycled. Yeah. So if you look at this diagram, it's another way of looking at it, but I have put in here, when you have nutrients, when you have sufficient excess nutrients, you will stop the autophagy. You will inhibit when you have AMPK that is activated through nutrient starvation or your thyroid hormones or the CR mimetics like metformin, as well as cellular stress or ischemic factor hypoxia, ischemic factor HIF, they are all stimulants of autophagy. Whereas mTOR, which is stimulated by eating too much proteins, will inhibit autophagy. So once it's in the autophagosome, it's lysed and then recycling for metabolism, energy, redox, and biomass. Microautophagy, as I mentioned, there is no ER, there is no autophagosome. It's direct engulfment into the lysosome. CMA or chaperone-mediated autophagy is different from macroautophagy because it does not involve the formation of autophagosomes and autolysosomes. It targets cellular proteins and lipids, but not organelles. The protein cargo is directly delivered to the lysosomes through the interaction of heat shock proteins. These are highly conserved proteins. They balance the amount of, balance the protein homeostasis between what is inside and what is outside. But they act as chaperones for these misfolded proteins. So there are different types of heat shock proteins, 70, 40, and 90. They all form a complex that recognizes misfolded proteins. Then it is used as a chaperone. And as I mentioned, 30 to 40% of the protein that are formed could be misformed. And if you have effective autophagy, then you get rid of these misfolded proteins before they accumulate and cause disease. So the ability to recognize misfolded proteins and getting rid of these misfolding proteins before they cause damage and disease is by having a healthy autophagy. And to have an active autophagy, remember the number of hours you stay without food is critical. So this is how it works. You form a complex heat shock protein for 70 is the main one. Then it forms a complex with 40 and 90. This is a type of protein. Misfolded protein is actually unfolded again, delivered through the LAMP2A into the lysosome. And the LAMP2C is for RNA and your DNA. They all have their purpose. CMA or chaperone-mediated autophagy is inhibited by aging, refined and fast foods, sugar, high protein, and high fat diet. When I mention high fat diet, it is not the good fats, but they are usually the saturated or trans fats. Whereas they are activated by fasting, starvation, oxidative stress, NRF2, which is an oxidative antioxidant system that is activated by glutathione, hydrogen peroxide, provided it is through the catabolism, the activation of catalase that reduces hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. Now, during this process, that reactive oxygen species of free radicals become beneficial. So we all need certain amount of free radicals in our body. But at the same time, excessive free radicals must be neutralized by antioxidants. So in order, if you want to look at autophagy and that is related to mitochondrial health is again very closely related to antioxidants and magnesium. Antioxidants, glutathione, vitamin C. Magnesium, because magnesium reduces your intracellular oxidative stress by maintaining healthy levels of calcium inside the cell. I stopped actually prescribing iron and calcium to antenatal patients many years ago. it just didn't make sense to me to give iron to someone who is not iron deficient. And I didn't want to do it as a routine for pregnant women because they need iron. I needed justification. Only if they are iron deficient, I used to give. And it just didn't make sense to me that taking calcium helps in preserving bone health, because you look at what's happening in the populations who drink a lot of milk, they have more osteoporosis than in the populations who do not drink milk. So it just didn't make sense to me. So I stopped these two supplements many, many, many years ago. But now we know with all the evidence that excess intracellular calcium is a cause of many diseases and death. So it is best to avoid too much calcium in the body. So calcium supplementation or calcium from soy and milk must be avoided. That is how magnesium helps. Now, hypoxia may sound frightening. How can hypoxia help your autophagy? Now, this is short-term hypoxia. In ancient cultures, there are many breathing techniques. For those who want to read about this, you can read about in yoga. It's called pranayama. Prana is wind or air. Yama is a state of meditation. So you need to calm yourself. You can just Google alternate nostril breathing. You'll get that information. Now, when you practice this controlled breathing, you create a state of hypoxia, short-term hypoxia. I know it is helpful because I believe in this. I don't have to have a lot of scientific reasons to believe what was practiced for thousands of years. So very scientific-minded people who don't believe in all these things, they call this a pseudoscience. And what was told to me as a doctor was supposed to be true science. But I realized also that this is not true. Pseudoscience has lot of benefits, lot of things that is beneficial to us. Although we find it difficult, our small brain find it difficult to explain it scientifically, but that does not make it pseudoscience. So when I prepared the lecture on autophagy, I realized this is how it works. So this is one way, alternate nostril breathing. The other one is where you can sit straight, calm yourself, do slow, deep breathing. The way to do this is your inhalation, which is always abdominal breathing. Please remember, your inhalation, if you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 2 seconds, that is hypoxia. But you exhale for 8 seconds. So if you inhale 4, you retain 2, hold 2, exhale for 8 seconds. If you are able to inhale slowly for 8 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 16 seconds. As you practice, you will develop the habit of breathing in slowly and breathing out double the time. This is how you also reduce free radical damage to your mitochondria. Okay? And of course, defective CMA is associated with many diseases. Mitophagy is recycling of defective mitochondria. It has been emphasized again and again and again, the importance of maintaining healthy mitochondria. One is the oxygen that we inhale. If we do, as I mentioned just now, breathing, it reduces carbohydrates. You need to be watchful about the amount and the type of carbohydrates we eat, and make sure you have optimum nutrients, especially magnesium, Q10, and many other supplements that we have gone through. Lipophagy is, these are all just terms, but basically they mean recycling. Degradation of lipid droplets, especially triacyl glycerols and phospholipids. Okay. Now, xenophagy, as I mentioned before, is a process by which anything that is foreign to your body, like viruses and bacteria, those who practice regular fasting, we'll go through this, definitely you'll have less risk of getting infected. If you look at what's happening in COVID, people who have diabetes are the ones who seem to be getting serious illness and dying. People who are aged and debilitated are the ones who get sick. I have always said this. Don't make a big fuss about this SARS-CoV-2 virus. It's a virus which is very close to the common flu. Although in some cases, yes, it can be trouble. It can be trouble. Seems to be affecting the body in many other pathways that we have not even understood fully. But it all revolves around your immune system. We have actually brought upon ourselves many kinds of suffering. We think that we are very mighty and powerful, but in God's creation, you are just a tiny particle. So being humble to yourself and to your body, respect your body. If I can just divert a little bit, I tell everybody who wants to listen, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I try to be as spiritual as I can. I believe that this is your first temple. And everywhere you go to places of worship, church, and for me, they are second. The first is this. So if you want to keep this clean, your soul clean, you need to maintain the body clean also. So you need to eat healthy. The fact that even younger people are getting cancers, diabetes, and stroke, and all kinds of infectious diseases now is simply because we are eating too much of carbs and the wrong carbs. Yeah. So this is one reason why COVID is suddenly waking us up and to make us realize that how fragile we are. And there are some proteins, they are a little bit of heavy stuff. For those in the advanced level, they will be able to recognize these. The main one will be the ULT complex 1 and 2. They are very important because they become a complex with, I have a slide, they become a complex, attached to the ATGs, autophagy related genes, and they become a complex that initiate actually the double membrane formation from the endoplasmic reticulum. So there are many types, and some we know the function, some we don't know the function. And one of that is FIP200. This is important because if it is healthy, it maintains your healthy hematopoietic system, including your stem cells. So this is how it works. I will go through this again and again and again. Too much of carbs, which is glucose in your body, inhibits AMPK, one of the very important signaling molecules. Once AMPK is inhibited, then the mTOR is active. mTOR is for cell proliferation, cellular growth, differentiation. So too much is cancer formation. Whereas when you inhibit your amount of glucose, your AMPK becomes active. This cursor seems to be running all over. And it suppresses the mTOR, activates the AMPK. Once AMPK is activated, you can see from here that the autophagy is activated. So it evolves around the amount and the type of carbs that you consume. The benefits, autophagy is able to create homeostasis during the times of stress and disease. It gives you more energy, promotes cell survival during starvation and nutrient depletion. But now, unfortunately, too much food is available, abundant. So if you drive around, you can see KFC and McDonald's full. And until people sit outside and eat, even at 2 a.m. Too much of autophagy can cause cell death and morbidity. This happens if you practice prolonged starvation, which is not necessary. It's able to recycle your senescent cells and its organelles before they become sick and recognized in the process of apoptosis, which creates actually inflammation. It preserves your organelle function one of the most important factor is improving mitochondrial health and regeneration or formation of new mitochondria. Let me check the time. Reduces chronic inflammation, which is silent. Reduces free radicals, as I mentioned. Reduces oxidative stress. The less carbs you take, the less oxidative stress, less free radicals. Stimulates stem cell release. Okay. Many times I've been asked by my patients whether they can take stem cells. My answer has always been this: try not to put fish into dirty water, dirty pond. They won't live. So in order for your stem cells to live and give you the benefits, you need to have a clean system. That means you need to have healthy cells. So start with a healthy diet, exercise, and detoxify. Have healthy cells first, then the stem cells will survive. But by having these healthy cells through autophagy itself, you'll be able to stimulate the release of your own stem cells. It improves immune function. I have a couple of slides on this. Reduces and prevents excessive, uncontrolled cell growth and cancers. Reduces and prevents metabolic dysfunctions like obesity and diabetes, as well as neurodegenerative diseases. Parkinson's is common, Alzheimer's is becoming common. It also improves physical performance. When you practice the type of diets that I'll advise, you should be ready to be a little bit off your normal standard, even if it was an unhealthy standard. You'll be off for 2 to 3 weeks. Remember, the ancient practice of practicing something repeatedly for 21 days is because it becomes a habit. Once you practice something, anything you practice repeatedly for 21 days, it becomes your habit, then eventually it becomes your character and your destiny. So the first 2 to 3 weeks, you can feel tired, and improved physical performance comes in after that. So if you change your diet, your patients are going to tell you they feel tired. You should prepare them for that. It prevents toxic buildup of cellular waste, lyses cancer cells, and reduces tumorigenesis, the origin of tumors. Eliminates viruses, including dormant viruses. This is important for someone who has viruses such as herpes virus, bacteria, as well as parasites. Reduces oxidative stress, reduces, if you have impaired autophagy, you can generate oxidative stress and impair your affect your endoplasmic reticulum health, accumulation of unfolded proteins that I mentioned, and it can also impair the iron ferritin complex recycling. So you will have disturbed iron metabolism. So how do you activate autophagy? Fasting and calorie restriction. We'll go through this. Growth factor and nutrient deprivation through diet again. Hypoxia that I've mentioned. And if you have healthy system, the fact that you are invaded by viruses or bacteria creates cellular stress, and that activates autophagy, provided you have a healthy system. If you are already sick and tired, then it will be worse off for you. I mentioned to you about thyroid hormones. One of the main pathways of autophagy activation is through AMPK, which actually becomes less functional as we age. And one of the reasons is low thyroid hormones. But the thyroid hormone that actually activates AMPK is free T3, not T4. So the conventional practice of prescribing thyroxine, which is T4, may not achieve its purpose, especially in aged people, if you are not able to convert T4 to T3. So this is why doctors who are trained in integrative medicine and hormone therapies, we always use a combination of T4 and T3. Autophagy can also be activated through your longevity genes. And if your body is in a healthy state, once your body recognizes accumulation of wrong proteins, autophagy will be activated. If you maintain a healthy body, as soon as you have calcium overload in the body, autophagy is activated, because the body recognizes that too much calcium inside the cell is very, very toxic for the cell. Chemotherapy and radiotherapy, we don't have much evidence. So basically, if we eat less fats, less carbs, less protein, you have less nutrient. The nutrient that goes through the Krebs cycle, the acetyl-CoA for protein synthesis, would be less. So you conserve energy. If you have low ATP, you are going to activate autophagy, because it will create energy for you. If you have low NAD, the same thing happens. So autophagy activation also is through nutrient starvation that I mentioned. The way it works is inhibition of mTOR, activation of p53 and AMPK. We have seen some slides. Decreasing ADP ratio, that means ATP is low. Decreasing NADH ratio. Reactive oxygen species or free radicals who are in the certification course, and some of you may not be doctors. Reactive oxygen species. Remember, most of these reactive oxygen species in the body are created by consuming carbohydrates, especially refined carbs and sugars, and also a lot of bacteria and viruses that could reside in your oral cavity and your gut, especially Candida, which is largely unrecognized. So once you have reactive oxygen species, it activates the p52 protein. I mentioned to you that this is a cargo delivery system, cargo of damaged, misfolded proteins. So once p52 is activated, it senses, it's activated by metabolic stress. Once it initiates, it actually prevents diseases, improves your detoxification, reduces inflammation, and slows down aging process. But in order to have a healthy p52 system itself, you need to practice self-control in the form of eating. Whatever you do, you need to practice that. That is the first pillar of health. So coming back to mitochondria, plays a very crucial role in generating energy, because autophagy itself needs energy. So spending too much of energy in digesting food, you're not going to have effective autophagy. Mitochondria just does not provide energy for autophagy. Actually, the outer membrane of mitochondria helps with the formation and elongation of the autophagosome membrane. So this is another reason why you must have healthy mitochondria. So once you have defective mitochondria or dysfunctional mitochondria, autophagy is impaired. And the way to do this, the way to reverse this, is through calorie restriction. Once you restrict the calories, remember, we are talking about calories especially from refined carbs and sugars. They are more dangerous than other forms of calories. So once you have calorie restriction, you have less insulin. Insulin is a highly inflammatory hormone. It can actually activate tumorigenesis, and it can cause, I tell my patients, it can cause A to Z disease, just like increased homocysteine. So these two, homocysteine and insulin, should be part of our routine screening. Once you restrict calories, you also have decreased IGF-1. So the question is, what about people who are aging, who have low IGF-1? Should it be corrected? If it is going to affect your autophagy, should I correct my low growth hormone? In my opinion, yes, you should correct it if you want to slow down the aging process itself, but it should be a safe dose, okay? And for those who are interested in improving your knowledge on hormones, we are putting together a series of webinars over a period of year from theory. We should be starting it soon, and so you wait for the information from SAHAMM. If we have adequate numbers, then I should be able to discuss and bring down the fees. So we'll give you the information. Now, coming back to calorie restriction, once you restrict the calories, you increase your SIRT wins. SIRT 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Now, once you increase your SIRT wins, it actually activates autophagy. It actually increases your mitochondrial regeneration, new formation of new mitochondria as well. It improves your fatty acid oxidation, so you have less fat deposition. So it actually extends your lifespan. Calorie restriction also activates AMPK. AMPK activates autophagy, decreases mTOR. So once you have decreased mTOR, there is less protein synthesis. But too much of restriction will not be beneficial because you need to build proteins even as you age. What we are saying is excessive amount of protein consumption. So this is how it works, calorie restriction. Once you restrict the calories, you have improved glucose and lipid metabolism, you handle stress better, you have reduced apoptosis, increased autophagy, mitochondrial biogenesis, decreased inflammation, and gene silencing. So even if you have polymorphic genes or abnormal genes, we always mention this, that they are all loaded guns. Whether you pull the trigger is what the environment decides. So the environment, if it is healthy, the trigger is not pulled. So even if you have abnormal genes, by practicing certain diet and lifestyles and nutrient supplements, nutrient optimization, you can actually prevent these abnormal genes from getting activated or expressed. Exercise is another way of activating autophagy. The stress of exercise improves autophagy. Now, one exercise that actually does this better is the HIT, high intensity HIIT, interval training. That means you spread your exercise, say you have 5 sets of exercise, you go through one after another non-stop. Say you can go on the treadmill for 2 minutes and go and do different types of exercise, either pumping, weightlifting, one after another, 3 to 5 sets of those, and then come back, rest for a minute, come back to the thread and go through this. So this is HIIT, high interval, intensive interval training. So this actually creates hypoxia, the short-lived hypoxia that I mentioned, that activates autophagy. This is another way why HIIT actually helps in weight loss. Hypoxia we have seen. Chronic hypoxia. I'm not advising you to hold your breath for 20 minutes. That's a world record. I can hold for 70 seconds. I've tried. Initially, when I tried, I could hold only for 30 seconds. Now I can do up to 70 seconds. But I don't know. I wonder how people can do for 20 minutes. But that's a world record. Okay. Now we are not talking about chronic prolonged hypoxia. That is not good. That's what happens in cancer cells, right? So AMPK, I've mentioned this. It is the master switch for your energy expenditure. It actually, the function declines as you age. So you want to activate, you must make sure you practice restriction on what you eat. Thyroid hormone replacement for those who are hypothyroid will be very, very important. Metformin actually activates AMPK. It works through AMPK activation. AMPK can reduce insulin resistance. It activates a longevity gene FOXO, increases oxygen uptake. So there are many ways that AMPK can work. If you have low nutrients, this is natural. Metformin is okay. I'm not a diabetic, I'm not obese, but I still take about 2-3 times a week. The fenformin, I don't prescribe because it's metformin is a safer form. The others are all chemicals. ICA and 5-2. ICA is a drug. whenever there is something natural, pharmaceutical companies would like to come up with something that is a drug like Abbott, there is all these numbers. So if AMPK is activated, basically it's going to suppress your mTOR, but it will stimulate your DNA repair, fatty acid oxidation, you have less fatty acid synthesis, improves autophagy, and reduces your inflammatory enzymes, COX-2, and cancer progression. So there are many benefits of just AMPK alone. I take it regularly, and I also prescribe to patients. I've seen many patients improving with this supplement, but do not expect quick results. You need to give it time, and especially for those who are obese and diabetic. So we can skip this. Inhibition of autophagy if your mTOR is activated through high protein diet, insulin, IGF-1. Now, when I say IGF-1, I'm talking about physiological replacement to slow down aging. I'm not talking about superdosing yourself with IGF-1 for bodybuilding. That's not the competition that people enter with IGF-1. That is too much. That stimulates mTOR and could be a reason for high risk of cancer. Insulin. Now, it just doesn't make sense to me that diabetic patients are prescribed insulin because, of course, we offer very little advice on diet. We are not trained in this kind of medicine, unfortunately. So when drugs don't work, the concept of insulin resistance is largely unknown, is unrecognized, and there are many non-believers who call this pseudoscience. Now, because there is insulin resistance, the amount of insulin that your pancreas produces is not able to carry that insulin into your cell, sugar into the cell, so the sugar is what you test and is going to be high. So when drugs can't do the job, because there is insulin resistance already, and drugs do not improve insulin resistance, what happens is the blood sugar keeps going up and the patient is then prescribed insulin. Only way to find out if someone needs insulin is by testing the fasting insulin. Insulin should be given to someone who is insulin deficient. But in some cases, you will see that they have high blood sugar and they have normal insulin levels. Please be warned. These are patients who are having pancreatic insufficiency because they are not able to produce. You should expect the high levels of insulin. But anyway, when you have high levels of insulin, you are going to actually suppress your autophagy. Now, I've mentioned to you that if you have suppressed or impaired autophagy, you are at a higher risk of many types of diseases, including neurodegenerative diseases and cancers and many. So how can insulin be beneficial? This is a reason why diabetic patients on insulin have much higher risk of cancers. So insulin should not be the therapy for diabetic patients unless one is insulin deficient, like what you see in children. Okay, aging is a cause for high mTOR activity, high calorie intake, especially refined carbs and sugar. So talk one, this is again, it could be dry for some of you. Basically, if you feed yourself with lots of proteins and a high carb diet, you could actually activate mTOR. Too much mTOR as you age is not good, because you are not at the stage of your life where you want too much of protein making. You want healthy proteins in whatever amounts that you need to keep your enzymes, your systems all functioning well. You don't want too much. But at the same time, maintaining muscle mass is absolutely critical for aging people. So this is a fine balance. So avoid consuming excessive proteins. My advice to my patients, I keep it very simple for practical purposes and simpler understanding. What I tell them is a low carb diet. 60%, 50 to 60% vegetables, 20 to 30% is good proteins like eggs and fish, avocados, nuts. Although beans and peas, they have carbs, they still have proteins. always with good fats, and I advise virgin coconut oil. The amount of carbohydrates I tell them to take is 10 to 15% of the meal. That means they look at the plate, what's on the plate. Simple, more practical. And I tell them what carbs they can consume, what carbs are toxic. So the gluten, the flour, oats, and sugar I always label them as toxic, as poisons. So this is how I advise my patients. So mTOR, you do not want to stimulate by overeating, especially proteins, by having too much insulin, too much of growth hormone, too much of stress in your body. Anytime you control mTOR, you have improved longevity. So this is another diagram for those of you who had been in the advanced level. You can go through this, but if you look at this diagram, you can see how mTOR suppresses the ULK1, the complex, which actually activates your autophagy related gene complex that initiates autophagy. So once mTOR is activated, your ATGs or autophagy related genes are suppressed, so thereby autophagy itself is inhibited. P53 is a tumor suppressor gene. Again, it is activated when you practice not actually starvation, but regulated starvation, controlled starvation in the midst of plenty. It is not what was available to your ancestors, okay? And that creates cellular stress. Growth factors and hormones like insulin and IGF-1, they work by stimulating your mTOR. And mTOR, as I mentioned, will inhibit autophagy, but actually stimulate cell proliferation and growth. We do not want too much of this. Autophagy plays a big role in immune system. So it is important for both your adaptive and your innate immune system. Let's see, okay, we go through this slide, then there is a good diagram to emphasize this. Now, autophagy proteins enhance your adaptive immunity, including the development and homeostasis of the immune system. So it actually helps with your thymus, your T cells, your B cells, and it plays a crucial role in maintaining healthy B cells, as well as your CD4 and CD8 cells, and the fetal hematopoietic cells. Eliminates autoreactive T cells in the thymus, and it helps in presenting antigens to your CD4 and CD8. Actually, when you have healthy immune system, your T knife cells, once they recognize the need, they actually are matured into T cells, CD4, CD8 T cells. They then actually communicate with B cells to produce your antibodies. And this communication is through interferon, and interferon is produced by your natural killer cells and macrophages. This is why the first line of defense is very, very critical, the innate immune system. So if you have a strong innate immune system, as soon as the virus enters your body, it is going to get killed. There is very little chance that it will survive in your cell. Failing this is when it invades. And usually when you have a weakened immune system, innate immune system, the first line, it is associated with a weakened adaptive immune system, the second line of defense. So then you become defenseless. And one of the big reasons, if you have understood this lecture, is because we consume too much carbs. And please don't give this to your children also. Avoid children eating too much of carbs, especially sugar. Even the newborn is exposed to sugar from formula milk, which is very sad. So this is a diagrammatic representation how your adaptive innate immune system functions are helped by autophagy. Okay, so there are many ways that actually autophagy can help to improve your immune system. and the body recognizes the need and kills your appetite when you're sick. This is in your slide. You can have a look at it later. Now, mutation of autophagy, and this is where cancer comes in. If you have mutated autophagy related genes that they increase the susceptibility to intracellular pathogens in all forms of life and also possibly in the human beings. So autophagy is very important for all of us. But as always, when I said we have this megalomaniac attitude where we feel that we are the omnipotent and omnipresent and we are the mighty ones, when a small invisible virus can bring the world to its knees. So this is how vulnerable we are. So microbes, they are very smart. And all the hype about vaccines, even before clinical trial, who gets the vaccine out first and who can make their first billion, and all this is without clinical trial, okay? When every one of them claims that vitamin C has no evidence, where's the evidence, including, this is what WHO says. Vitamin C doesn't have evidence, but they want to introduce vaccines. They do not realize, some of us who are trained in this way, we all recognize that microbes, especially viruses, mutate. So we are talking about a new strain in Malaysia, maybe in Southeast Asia. How is the vaccine going to work? Your vaccine works against a virus that is dressed in white clothes. It is not going to recognize something that is dressed in black. So microbes have a unique way of survival, okay? Now, even your macrophage that can produce the chemical called cathelicidin and activated by vitamin D3. This is why vitamin D3, when you're deficient, you're more prone for viral and bacterial infection, even tuberculosis. So, but the viruses, the bacteria themselves, they have an ability to shut down the cathelicidin. So they have a way of surviving. One of the ways microbes survive is by shutting down autophagy. They are very smart. So the way to help is to keep your system healthy and effective. So if you say healthy system, that means one of the main factors in maintaining the health, if you look at mitochondrial function and autophagy, is to maintain it in a healthy state. Then you give less chance for these microbes to actually dupe your system, but they have the ability to survive. Autophagy and cancer. If you have defective autophagy related genes, there is increased risk of prostate, ovarian, breast cancers, probably many other types. In the lab, if you delete certain autophagy related genes, benign liver tumors have been observed, and large deletion of these autophagy related genes are associated with BRCA, and this is found in breast cancer and ovarian cancers. So if you have a defective gene, you see what you can do, find out the root cause and fix it. Don't go and remove both your breasts. Who did it? Angelina Jolie. Am I right, Sati? Okay. So, and autophagy actually is beneficial. But cancer cells, as I mentioned, like microbes, they are also very smart. They can actually activate autophagy that supplies nutrients and energy for them to survive. So this is a fine control. So the whole idea of healthy living is not to get into that stage, and this is prevention. So even if you have a cancer cell floating around, which is often not checked because we always do tumor markers, or we rely on PET scans and MRI and CT scans, they only pick up daughter tumors when they've already formed. By that time, they have metastasized very likely. We are not able to test your cancer stem cells, which is usually through blood. So even if you have this, if you have effective way of activating your system, necessary system like autophagy that can get rid of your cancer cells, then those cells do not survive, grow and proliferate. So when you have efficient autophagy by controlling the initiation, tumorigenesis, and by controlling inflammation, you will be able to suppress cancer from growing. But cancer cells can also overcome these restrictions by increasing autophagy for their own benefits and by creating excessive hypoxia around them. So short-term hypoxia is beneficial. Chronic severe hypoxia is not beneficial. So as a cancer suppressor, autophagy acts by reducing the stress and inflammation, promotes cell death of abnormal cells, reduces the DNA damage and genome instability. As a promoter, this is a possibility difficult to be confirmed. Cancer cells on the whole are very autophagy dependent. Yeah. In cancer cells, the basal autophagy itself is unregulated. I mentioned to you just now that too much autophagy means too much of recycling, and that is not good. That can actually cause cell death of healthy cells, and it can promote tumorigenesis. Unregulated autophagy can cause growth of tumors and prolonged survival of cells, which is not good, and also can lead to invasion and metastasis. There are some therapies for cancer that you can induce, you can suppress autophagy, or you can induce autophagy depending on what is happening in and around the cells. But I don't have much experience now. I read a lot on this. Those who are interested, you can read about it. One of the therapies could be chloroquine. But if you inhibit autophagy in a tumor cell, it can actually be beneficial on one hand because it doesn't allow the cells to grow. They just lyse the abnormal cells. But if you actually go on inhibiting, the cancer cells can also benefit from this. Cancer cells have a dual way of surviving. If you control, they can still survive. So this is why we always say, once cancer takes root, it is a tough fight. Metabolic diseases, we have seen how it is related to oxidation of fats, reducing obesity, reducing diabetes by reducing chronic inflammation. Now, basically, when you have less inflammation and better control of your metabolism of glucose and fats, you have less chronic degenerative diseases. As far as neurodegenerative diseases are concerned, if you have less accumulation of abnormal or unfolded proteins, you have less risk. So this is how autophagy helps. And they also help in many ways by improving the organ health overall. This I've mentioned. Now, having healthy cells means your ability to handle stress and recovery from stress would be better. Anytime when there is stress, short-term physical stress is okay. Prolonged stress or psychological stress is not healthy, but they all lead to damaged proteins, DNA, and organelles. So if you have effective or healthy autophagy function, then you will take care of these damaged proteins or organelles and DNA, and you still form new cells, and your ability to handle stress would be better. So how do you augment autophagy? One is exercise. I've mentioned the type of exercise that would be beneficial: weight bearing, HIIT, short sprints, intermittent fasting, and water fasting, calorie restriction. Now, what I do for my patients is, if I see a cancer patient, I advise them to go on keto diet for about a month, maybe 2 months, not on a long-term basis. I would want them to switch to a low-carb diet. When I say low-carb diet, I make it simple. The formulas that I follow: 50 to 60% vegetables, 20 to 30% proteins and good fats, and 10 to 15% of carbs that can be eaten. Like, I prefer brown rice, I prefer quinoa, sweet potatoes. I'll always tell them to avoid gluten, sugar, and including dairy products, unless they are consumed occasionally. That's okay. Once in a way you want to have is okay. Now, what I do is I tell them to reduce from the current state of carbohydrate consumption, unhealthy eating. I'll ask them to make gradual change. So even if they reduce the amount of, say, for example, the rice one eats a teaspoon every day, 2 teaspoons, 3 teaspoons, it takes about 2 weeks to start into a low carb diet, and they'll be able to manage better. Otherwise, the cravings set in, they feel hungry, they feel tired, and they become angry, and they will not be compliant. So I make the change very gradual, give them about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to fit into a low carb diet. Once they fit into a low carb diet, I advise them to go on the intermittent fasting. And I don't follow the 16-8 rule immediately, which means 8 hours of eating, 16 hours of fasting, where you can drink. You can drink green tea, herbal tea, lemon juice, water, black coffee, that's fine. But many people will be finding it difficult to do. So what I do is, okay, if they want to eat for 10 hours, 12 hours, it's fine. But you gradually reduce the number of hours of eating so that it comes to 8 hours. And as long as you have a serving of good fats like coconut oil or ghee or olive oil mixed with the food, then there is less hunger. Hunger is because we eat too much carbohydrates. And when you reduce the carbs and you substitute with more vegetables, protein, and good fats, there's less hunger. So that's the time I tell them to follow the 8-16. So what I do is I have my organic vegetable juice with my supplements. That's for breakfast. I start at 10 a.m. and at about 1 p.m. I have nuts, beans or peas that are steamed and sauteed with steamed or lightly grilled vegetables, sometimes half-boiled eggs. And at 6 p.m. I have my dinner. Very, very little rice and lots of vegetables with all other typical Indian food that I want to have. And after 6, I stop eating. Until 10 next day, I have my organic vegetable juice. So this takes time. You be kind to your patients. Give them time for this transition. But this is intermittent fasting. This itself is a beautiful way of staying healthy. What I do on top of this is we practice water fasting once a week, which means the whole day is just water. So you then tell the patients, okay, the next step you do is water fasting. So I tell them to come back. I only expose them to the next step when they come back. I don't give them all the information that may look like frightening to them. So go step by step. So first come to low carb diet, then go to intermittent fasting, but don't go to 8-16 straight away. Allow them longer hours of eating if they are used to. Slowly cut it down and then practice water fasting. They can, any one of us can even practice 3 to 5 days of water fasting every 3 months. These are all the ways of preventing diseases and including reversing diseases. Okay. Calorie restriction, especially you have to be very mindful of carbs, especially empty calories from refined carbs and sugar, because they create so much of free radicals, and that's a lot of stress to your mitochondria. Keto diet, I've mentioned. Protein fast is where you consume less protein, less than 25 grams a day. You can have a fasting mimicking diet. This is not my favorite. You eat very little carbohydrates for 5 days, then what people do is they load themselves. So it becomes intermittent fasting is something that people can practice every day. Once they are used to it, they will become happy. You can see a lot of changes. People lose weight and they look better, they feel better, but after the first 2 to 3 weeks. So you can measure how effective your dieting is by measuring your glucose and ketone ratio. So you measure your blood glucose in milligrams, your blood ketone in millimoles. You divide your sugar by 18 and then divide this by 3. If you maintain 1:1 to 4:1, then you are supposed to be in a healthy state. So there is always some ketones in your body. CR mimetics are the supplements that you can take to activate your autophagy by mimicking calorie restriction state. This actually, let me tell you, when it comes to health and longevity, don't go for shortcuts. They are beneficial. As I mentioned, I take resveratrol, I take green tea, I take metformin, I take quercetin, I take berberine. I used to take niacin, but now I take B complex, so I stopped. Garcinia, I don't take. Many of these I take, but they can be helpful. Don't rely on them for bad habits, as a substitute for bad habits. These are helpful, yeah, but you need to control your dietary habits. So how do they work? They mimic fasting state. They decrease acetylation. Acetylation is a process by which you make proteins, and deacetylation is just the opposite of that. Increase phosphorylation to improve function of your cell. This is how CR mimetics work. The same thing you can actually do with your diet. And it's still good to add metformin, but provided you supplement yourself with B12 if you're on metformin long term. Hormones, this is interesting, especially thyroid hormones. They actually help in many ways. One of the main ways would be improving autophagy by activating AMPK. Okay, but your autophagy can be inhibited by insulin and IGF-1. IGF-1 is not dangerous as long as you take the physiological dose, but insulin, please remember, anyone who is on insulin, you should ask them to check the fasting insulin before deciding whether they should continue the insulin. And this is actually, now lack of knowledge is fine, but common sense should prevail. You know, without checking insulin levels, how would anybody even diagnose pre-diabetic state? How would anyone, why should anybody prescribe insulin without knowing if a person is deficient, or usually they have insulin resistance and they are in hyperinsulinemic state. They are already in a bad state of health. So giving insulin is not good. Thyroid hormones. Now liver is one of the main targets of autophagy, and thyroid hormones one of the main target is liver. So this is a master function of thyroid hormone. That's why we call it the orchestra of hormones, master of orchestra. Thyroid hormones are strong inducers of liver autophagy. Hypothyroidism is closely associated with multiple liver disorders. Steatosis, that is building up of fat in the liver. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, accumulation of fat in non-alcoholic people and with the hepatitis, even hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay. As I mentioned, thyroid hormone activate your AMPK and the ULK pathway. Plays a critical role in liver lipophagy. So if you have fatty liver, conventional treatment would probably prescribe statins. Now, statins, I read somewhere that there is a new drug that has been introduced that can control, reduce triglycerides. Let me tell you, this is a criminal mind when you have a reason for why you have increased triglycerides. Increased triglycerides are simply because of high carbohydrate consumption, and the insulin will convert the excess glucose into triglycerides and deposit it for safe use. This is what actually your body is designed to do. When there is food, it will store. When there is no food, it will use what is stored. But now we don't have a time when there is no food. There is always plenty. So the storage goes on increasing. This is what happens in the liver. Triglycerides are from carbs and glucose. So the way to control triglycerides is simply by reducing your carbs and exercising and activating your autophagy. You can use AMPK. If they are hypothyroid, you replace the thyroid hormones. That is sufficient. 6 months time when you go for an ultrasound, there will be a lot of improvement. So this is another diagram where you can go through when you're free to see how thyroid hormones actually help in autophagy. Uh, nice picture. Now, this doesn't happen to trees. We go through these seasons, if in my opinion, you should go through this every day. This is where, when you eat and when you fast, you know, all the 4 seasons that you see in this world is happening in you constantly. You just have to tap what nature has given you. Eat at a time when your body is able to eat, digest, and use the nutrients, and leave it to rest at a time when it is supposed to rest. Respect your circadian rhythm. Your body has this rhythm where it works from sunrise to sunset. After sunset, it wants to rest. What do? We have late dinners and we have suppers. And the moment we wake up in the morning, we are already gulping our food. So you are not respecting your circadian rhythm. So all these seasons, they will be haywire. That's what we see in this world now. Not only nature has gone haywire, many of us live in a haywire lifestyle. So it is not good. So coming back to how would I summarize autophagy is this. It's a very important, very critical, natural process by which you can actually prevent from going to a stage of damaged cells. The moment the cells are recognized to have aggregates of wrong proteins or lipid deposits or unhealthy state, then the autophagy should be activated to recognize these cells and recycle them. Use the cellular components to form new and healthy cells. Don't live with old and damaged cells. Now, this can happen by controlling what you eat and when you eat. It's as simple as that. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I can take questions now. Sati, you have to unmute yourself, Sati.
Okay. Both the questions are from Dr. Go Choi Fong. And her first question is, during exercise, when you have reached the peak of the exercise, you tend to breathe very rapidly. Instead of breathing through the mouth to take in oxygen rapidly, it was advised to breathe through the nose slowly. I'm not sure if this is also considered part of hypoxia practice. And
Actually, yogic breathing is usually through your nose. Okay. But when you exercise, when you are panting, you will definitely breathe through your mouth. This how, you know, you can't control for many of us. The idea of exercising is to improve your fitness level gradually, where you exercise until you are comfortable. I do not become breathless, because one of the ways why yoga helps, how yoga helps with longevity is you always learn how to have controlled breathing. You breathe slowly and you breathe, your respiratory rate will be lower because oxygen creates free radicals. So if you do rapid breathing because you exercise, of course you're going to create free radicals. So does that mean exercise is bad for you? No. Don't go to a level of exhaustion. So if you can exercise comfortably for 30 minutes, do that until you can do for 45 minutes. This is why long distance runners and people who play tennis for 6 hours and badminton for hours, they are not as healthy as people who have brisk walking, practice brisk walking, or those do workouts in the gym, because there is stress in between. When I talked about the high intensity intermittent training, interval training, it is short bouts. It only lasts for maybe 5-10 minutes. And you rest and repeat the cycle again. So the question of whether breathing through the nose or breathing through the mouth creates free radicals, anything, if you do rapid breathing and you are gulping oxygen, then of course it will create. So go slow with your exercise.
Okay, her next question is, will ketogenic diet cause mTOR C1 stimulation?
If you practice a ketogenic diet, if you actually take a lot of protein, that defeats ketogenic diet. Many people actually do it wrong because they believe that ketogenic diet means zero carbs, but you could end up eating a lot of proteins. Of course, excess proteins is going to stimulate your mTOR. But whereas if you restrict your proteins and have lots of good fats, but do not restrict the vegetables. This is what I call as modified keto diet. I don't restrict vegetables. They have carbs, but they are beneficial carbs. In that way, you do not stimulate mTOR.
Hello, Datuk. Can I ask 3 questions?
Yeah, sure.
You
You're testing my
mentioned...
memory. If you ask 3 questions
Okay,
in
one
a
at a
row,
time.
I have to remember.
One at a time then.
It's okay. Let's test my memory. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, let's just, metformin. Now, if somebody's taking metformin to control the the sugar levels, would it be beneficial to add berberine, or will it be excessive to take the 2? And I wanted to know, because metformin is actually a drug, isn't it? It's not a natural supplement.
Yeah, because, okay, it's a drug, but it has many beneficial effects. One of the side effects of metformin is that it creates B12 deficiency, and as long as you supplement. But it is a much, much better drug than most other drugs or all other drugs for diabetes, in my opinion, because this drug has been in use for so long, and we all know that metformin actually helps in many ways, including reducing the risk of carcinogenesis and by improving autophagy. So it's all right to take. As I mentioned, I take it for its benefits. I also take AMPK. Berberine has a different mechanism of action. If you want to combine, it's fine. But for healthy people, if you are talking about diabetics, it's better, in my opinion, to take metformin than to take other drugs. And it works well, provided you have other factors in place, healthy diet and exercise. Make sure they have enough magnesium and potassium. Diabetic patients have always low levels of intracellular magnesium and potassium. So you control all these, and once your insulin resistance improves, then you can continue to take metformin even if it is not on a daily basis. You can take 2 to 3 times a week if you want its benefit through AMPK and autophagy mechanisms. And you can combine with berberine.
Thank you. Question 2, you mentioned about the autophagy genes. So does that mean that the genes for autophagy is present in our body? We just need to activate it by the processes that you talked about.
Yes. And you can also have defective autophagy genes, and those defective state is associated with an increased risk of cancers that I mentioned. But I also mentioned that defective genes is like a loaded gun. The environment pulls the trigger. So if you have a healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, you optimize your intake of vitamins, minerals, you balance your hormones, you have a healthy detoxification, healthy immune system, healthy antioxidant system, keep the body in an alkaline state, then those defective genes will not be expressed. So if you say you have polymorphism, doesn't mean that you need to suffer the disease.
Correct.
So keeping them in check and expressing the good genes is through diet and lifestyle with all other factors that we have been discussing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so question 3. Uh, it, your lecture actually is fantastic, and you basically talk a lot about lifestyle practices with nutrition, exercise, and supplementation, and careful dosing of meds where appropriate. How long would a patient, or from your experience, begin to see changes in their body practicing the combination of all these things that you talked about?
Okay. What I see in my patients, if I have someone who is very committed, is ready to go, I always give the choice to my patients, whether they can follow 100% of my advice the very next day, or whether they want to start just with 10% and make the way up. I leave it to them, because if you force it on to someone who's not ready to accept, then they will not be compliant. That defeats the purpose, because you want to heal them. So it's better to just work along, and because everybody has a different mindset. Now, in my practice, if I have a patient, diabetic patient, who is willing to follow, okay, if they are on both insulin and drugs, I will change the drug to metformin, and I'll stop the insulin the very next day. So when do I see the changes? Very fast, as well as blood sugar level is concerned. Hypertension takes longer, so I don't play with hypertension drugs too fast or too soon. So when you do this and you ask them to follow a low carb diet with intermittent fasting, generally, as I mentioned, after 3 weeks is when you start to see the changes, because that's when the body becomes adaptive to changes. And after a month, you will see the weight loss, and you will definitely notice the clarity in the appearance, the skin. I have a Tamil school headmaster who has, he used to get chest pain, and he had various investigations, and he had an angiogram, came back with a septic hand, and nothing was found. Um, so we started him on chelation, but he was not compliant with diet. So when he went for his angiogram and he came back with inflammation at the site where the what do you call, the wire was putting, then it was the time he wanted to be compliant, and I was surprised within 6 weeks his complexion also changed, and he has lost so much of weight that anywhere he goes, this is within 3 months, now 3 months. Wherever he goes for meetings, everybody recognizes that he looks much better, and he has lost a lot of weight. But the problem is, we humans always have this tendency. If someone gains weight, we don't want them, or bad things that is going to come. The moment somebody loses weight, now everybody is asking him if he's sick, but he feels well. So to answer your question, you need to tell them that the body is the repair and rejuvenation. It takes 3 to 6 months, but after a month to 6 weeks, people will start noticing big changes.
Wow. Am I allowed one last question? Is there a test for mTOR?
No, it's usually done in research labs. It's a very complicated way of testing, and you have to test many other signaling molecules if you want to study one molecule. So not that I know of, but I know it's a very complicated way of testing.
Thank you.
Okay, there's another question from Dr. Elizabeth. Is there any indicator that we are in balanced beneficial autophagy?
One of the indicator would be, you just test your urine and see if you can see ketone bodies. Generally, if you are practicing intermittent fasting, the 12 hours, not so soon. You will notice over the period of weeks that you have ketones in your urine. That's a state of fasting. The other one would be to have a healthy fasting blood sugar, indirect way, and as well as to have a healthy fasting insulin levels, and also a healthy level of postprandial blood sugar. What I look at healthy level of blood sugar would be 3.5 to 4.8, 2 hours postprandial up to 6. Healthy insulin level would be 5 to 7. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, we have another question from Dr. Go as well. What if patient can't tolerate metformin, even the slow releasing formulation? What other alternatives do you use other than metformin?
Is the patient a diabetic?
Go.
You can ask directly.
Yeah. Yes.
Why
either
are you so
diabetic-
shy? Go. You
Yes,
need a chaperone. You need P62 and your UPS. Okay. Now I just want to know if the patient is diabetic, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this question.
Yep, diabetic.
Okay. Now this may not be exactly correct, but what I see in my practice is this. Many times if a patient becomes intolerant to food, there are patients who have multiple chemical sensitivity, multiple food sensitivity leading to drug intolerance, especially if they are diabetics. You may want to look at candida. And you will notice surprisingly that once you get rid of this candida, they might be able to tolerate metformin. But of course, there are biochemical individuality. Some people may not be able to tolerate even after candida eradication. So if they cannot tolerate metformin, it's all right. You can go for AMPK as a supplement. That would be a good choice. Optimize the thyroid function. That would be a good choice. And ask them to go on the low carb intermittent diet. The intermittent diet fasting itself should be a low carbohydrate diet. So just because people are eating for 8 hours, if they take in as much as they can within that 8 hours, it still defeats the purpose. Remember this. Although it is beneficial, you still want to be on the low carb diet. So the alternatives would be to be stricter with what they eat and the time they eat and how much they eat, and to make sure you optimize their thyroid function, and you need to give them two main supplements. One is AMPK, the other is magnesium.
So I have another question. If patient with for many years of diabetes, and I have two scenarios, or one patient is on insulin and another patient is not on insulin. But every time when I check that fasting insulin, it's always 2.5, is very, very low. Does this mean that this patient is actually insulin resistant?
Now, if the fasting, but what is the blood sugar? The blood sugar is high.
No, it's okay, it's good. Even the HbA1c is well controlled. I mean, not so well controlled, probably about 6.1. I have one which is 7. So I need to know why is it that, because I've been reading, there's always saying that because of very high insulin level, so insulin resistance. But I've seen quite a few patients where these are patients with prolonged many years of diabetes. And I have one patient who is on very high dose insulin and another patient from multiple medications where I actually, she managed to actually off all her medication. The only thing which she has high sugar is where she has this dawn effect where in the morning. So every time when I check these two patients fasting insulin, it's always 2 point something. It's very, very low. So do you still categorize them as an insulin resistance?
No.
One patient still eating carb, the other patient on fasting and on either intermittent fasting or even sometimes a full day fast. Her insulin is still 2.5, but she still has this dawn effect. So I need to know, whether is it really a insulin resistant problem?
You can look at it this way, Go. One, if you want to know whether their low insulin level is because of pancreatic insufficiency, you test the insulin levels 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours after meal.
Yeah.
If it spikes, then they are able to produce insulin level. Okay.
Okay.
Now, then why do they have low insulin levels in the fasting state? That means in the morning you're testing. One of the reason is they actually coexist with low cortisol. Patients who have low cortisol tend to have low insulin as well. So usually there is a correlation. So you can see most these patients will have low cortisol. So you need to correct the cortisol. And the body, if you want the body to respond to morning stress, fasting, any kind of stress, that, or if you want someone to have enough energy for the optimum function of the body in the morning, there are few things that are important: cortisol level, thyroid hormone level, magnesium level. So
Yes.
you may want to have a look, but I won't call it insulin resistance. If you want to know, sorry.
In fact, one of the patients where I told you, she's actually not. She was on multiple medications and she's not on medication anymore. She always have this. Her 2 hours after meal is always very good. Her early morning, which is she always has this Watsonogy or dawn effect, and this actually indicates that the cortisol may be released high, right? That she may have high cortisol, right? And she's also doing fasting. So I still, so probably most likely what you mentioned, that it's because of the pancreas insufficiency.
So if you want to confirm, test the insulin level after meal.
But does this mean also that she is also having cortical stress, cortisol's low, because she already experienced this Somogy effect or dawn effect, whatever you call it?
Okay, now the labs give you a result. Of course, you have to respect the results, right? But as clinicians, we also correlate with the clinical signs and symptoms. So it's not actually uncommon. I see patients whose cortisol level is high, but they have all the symptoms of cortisol deficiency. Why is that so? Is because the stress of coming into your clinic, unless they are in adrenal fatigue. Now, those who are mild or moderate adrenal insufficiency, the fact that they fast and they come to the clinic and the needle, the waiting and all the stress, that moment, the spike of cortisol is what we pick up. So if you want, you assess also their clinical symptoms. If they have all the features of cortisol deficiency, almost all of them will feel much better when you replace hydrocortisone, except in someone who is very, very low in magnesium. They won't tolerate for some reasons. They do not tolerate cortisol. If their cortisol is high, most of them will tolerate. So you can go by your clinical symptoms. Or if you want to confirm cortisol deficiency, then you do your salivary cortisol testing few times a day. Then you know where they are. But in the morning, it can be pseudo high. And this cortisol can be associated with low insulin levels. So you want to look at that, you want to confirm with 2-hour postprandial insulin, and you want to look at magnesium and thyroid hormones.
She's actually
But
on
if
magnesium
they are
thyroid.
asymptomatic, are they asymptomatic or they have symptoms like syncopal attacks and weakness? No.
She's actually on magnesium and also thyroid. She's on actually magnesium, thyroid, and
just look at the cortisol as well. Go. Just look at the cortisol. If you may want to look at the salivary cortisol over the period of the hours, then you will know where you stand. Actually, they have low cortisol, or they are okay. That's one. If they are okay, now low insulin, if it is a problem for patients because of pancreatic insufficiency, for example, it will be usually associated with poor muscle mass. Okay, and they will usually have the blood pressure will be on the higher side, and they can also exhibit symptoms of muscle cramps and muscle twitching, because you need insulin to take amino acids, magnesium, potassium into the cell. If you have low insulin level, they are likely to have low magnesium and potassium. So these are the symptoms. and they have low muscle mass. This is what happens at the end stage of diabetes when they have pancreatic insufficiency or too much of insulin resistance. So if it is low, you look at cortisol, optimize with thyroid and magnesium, and consider the pseudo spike in cortisol level at the time of taking blood
But will
and
I
correlate it with clinical signs and symptoms.
will I actually have the insulin the sugar level to go up if I still replace with cortisol in the morning? Because she's already having morning. The only problem she has is the morning cortisol. Morning sugar level. 2 hours after meal and also from morning and evening, she's very good. And also
Okay.
she only eats one meal a day.
Now, if the morning sugar level is the level that you mentioned just now, if it
Yes.
is low for her, does she have any symptoms of hypoglycemia?
Wait, hang on. No, the morning sugar is always high. It's always 7 point something. But the rest of the day throughout, even until the night, is always good. So because of that morning sugar level high, her HbA1c is always at 6.1 or 6.2. She can never go down. You asked me a question just now. What was it? Sorry. Sorry. Hello.
Yeah, I'm listening.
No. I interrupted. You asked me a question just now.
Whether the patient is having signs of hypoglycemia. Okay, I didn't get you initially that the morning blood sugar is high. Now, why would
Yes.
someone with a diet, everything else is normal, but morning hyperglycemia, despite
Yes.
controlling, having a healthy diet, is because of hepatoneoglucogenesis that happens overnight. And
Yep.
this cannot be controlled by insulin or other diabetic drugs other than metformin. Metformin controls the neoglucogenesis. Now, if she's
Yeah.
intolerant to metformin, you may achieve the same benefit by optimizing magnesium, thyroid, and give them AMPK. You might still get the same benefit.
Probably she's on magnesium, she's on thyroid, but she's not on AMPK. The only problem now is because last time there's one moment where she stopped all her medications, but now she put on. But she told me also she was on metformin, and somehow you still have this dawn effect, the Somoji effect, where the morning sugar still spike, even though with
That's
metformin.
hepatic neoglucogenesis. As we age, this is a problem. This is one of the other benefits of taking metformin. Now, if she is not tolerant to metformin, I'll find a way of activating autophagy through AMPK.
Okay.
So you can take AMPK as a supplement. Make sure the other factors are in place like thyroid and magnesium. If she's on magnesium, I would want to optimize. If you are not sure how much to give, check at least the red blood cell magnesium and keep it at the optimum. That means the higher end of the reference range. So you may, if that is on the lower end or she's deficient, increase the magnesium.
She may have diarrhea later on because she's already on 500.
Oh, no, okay. I take 1,500 milligrams a day.
Okay. All right.
Because I sweat a lot. And when I did my red blood cell magnesium, I'm still at the lower end of the reference range at 1,500 milligrams. And if I consider the multivitamins I'm taking 2,000 milligrams a day. So everybody is unique. Yeah, and please remember, you need to look at the candida. Consider candida.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry I took up so much time.
No worries.
Okay, next question, Datuk, is from Natasha Yusuf. Her question is, I have one question. A person who is already practiced IF but recently having heartburn and bloated, this person is also practicing the healthy lifestyle and healthy eating. What is the person lacking of or needed to be treated in order to stop the heartburn and bloating?
Conventional treatment addresses this problem as excessive hydrochloric acid. So, and usually the test for H. pylori will be positive. So the conventional treatment is to suppress your acid. It doesn't work. Nobody gets a permanent relief. Everybody needs more treatment because you need the acid to digest the food. Suppressing the acid leaves your food undigested, so it gets fermented, so there is more gas, so there is more bloating, and there is more heartburn because of reflux.
Okay.
Almost always, if you take care of the candida, almost always you will get rid of bloating, gastritis, reflux, excessive flatus, including many other problems like, eczemas and vaginal candidiasis, patients who have migraine, many other things. Candida can cause even hypertension and insulin resistance because there are numerous toxins that are released. Now, intermittent fasting gives the body a rest, but actually it's good. If you want to get rid of even viruses and bacteria, it's good. But candida is a very, very hardy pathogen because it's rooted in your intestine. So you can have a gastrointestinal GIT candida without any symptoms in the gut, but extra gut symptoms. That means all the problems will be outside the gut, like eczema for one example. You can have all the symptoms in the gut itself. So you can have gastritis, bloating, reflux, flatus. So actually, if you have these symptoms, my advice is to take the candida treatment. And that candida treatment needs a stricter control of diet because sugar and even fruits are not allowed for 2 to 4 weeks, completely no. And you will have to starve the fungus, you will have to kill the fungus. You can get in touch with me, I can give you the protocol, how to treat the candida.
Okay. Before I ask the next question, Dr. Silva asked me to inform you, Datuk, that metformin is originally derived from the French lilac or goat's rue plant.
Mm.
Yeah.
Originally, yes, because like paracetamol originally is from the bark, but then they always change one or two of the molecules and it becomes their own, then it becomes a drug. So metformin is, as far as I know, I could be wrong, it's not totally natural now, it's still a drug. Otherwise, pharmaceutical companies wouldn't have been interested. The problem is B12 deficiency. Otherwise, not much, but the benefits outweigh its risk. It's one of the drugs I usually endorse. Okay, anyway, thank you very much, Selva. Thank you very much.
Okay, next question is from Dr. Fred. And his question is, in one of your slides, you mentioned that P62 is stimulated by ROS. Meanwhile, P62 stimulates autophagy. So if we eat too much antioxidants, is it good? And
even the best of supplements, even if they are natural, excessive amounts is not what we advise. We advise optimum levels. But the world we live in, there is a lot of free radicals, oxidative stress. A small amount of oxidative stress that is generated by the mitochondria would be healthy. That's how we kill lots of cancer cells and pathogens. But the problem is constant bombardment of free radicals in our body from diet, from stress, deficiency of vitamins and antioxidants, from chemicals, pesticides. So this is the reason why antioxidants are important. Whether taking too much of antioxidants would suppress your small amount of ROS that is necessary to activate the P52. In my opinion, no, because we are not taking excessive amounts. But for some cases, like cancer patients, if you want to give a therapy that actually stimulates oxidative stress, like vitamin C, if you infuse it rapidly means not too rapid so as to cause too much of hypoglycemia, rapid enough to cause especially hydrogen peroxide. That would be oxidative stress to the cancer cells. At this time, we don't want to give antioxidants like glutathione. Otherwise, normal consumption of antioxidants would not deprive yourself of the small amount of free radicals that is healthy.
Okay, Datuk. So
Yes.
yes, in normal conditions, so for normal conditions, what should you suggest for vitamin C and D3?
You mean how much I'll give, is it?
Yeah, and
Okay. Vitamin
you
C,
see.
the rule, the golden rule of vitamin C is to recognize what one needs to maintain a good state of health, the dose that is optimum for you, and that would be determined by the bowel tolerance. So now a good dose would be for adults 6 grams a day. A better dose would be 10 grams, divided doses. If you really want to know how much your body needs, you will have to take in divided doses until you get diarrhea. You cut back a little bit. So it can be 6 grams, it can be 10 grams, it can be 14 grams. My tolerance is 14 grams a day. So this is what I take. I take 14 grams a day. Now this is the standard. This is a daily dose. When you are not well, the amount of vitamin C that you require will be much, much, much more. So generally what I notice is when I'm not feeling well, because I start loading myself with vitamin C very, very early. That means as soon as I realize that I'm not well. Most of the time, if I'm not well, it's usually allergy because of mold, because I've always been sensitive, but it doesn't bother me for many, many years now. So when I'm sick, I take about 60 grams of vitamin C. That would be sufficient. And this is on top of an infusion when the time permits. So this is how you should do. So the vitamin C, the golden rule is you establish your daily routine, daily dose what you require for maintaining good health. When you are not well, you have to increase the dose. So the rule is start the treatment soon enough, as soon as you notice that something is not right. The dose should be high enough. So the initial dose should be 4 to 6 grams, at least 4 grams. And the dosing must be frequent enough. So what I recommend is dose yourself at least 2 grams every 2 hours. So the first dose, for example, is 4 grams, 2 hours later is 2 grams. If no diarrhea, the next dose must be higher, 3 or 4 grams. Keep increasing until one gets diarrhea. Then you reduce and maintain the frequency. This should be done for long enough, for 3 days. So this is sufficient. One doesn't have to take antibiotics and cough medicines. I had a child 7 months old last week. So I told the parents, I'm not a pediatrician, so why are they seeing me? So they say, no, doctor, we heard that you don't prescribe drugs, so we wanted to see. I said, okay. The child was sick, fever and cough. I said, the only thing I'll give is vitamin C. Vitamin D, I won't give because I wanted them to put the child outside in the sun, and sun exposure is good enough for the newborn, the child. So vitamin D, C, what I gave, the dose I gave was 2 grams stat, 7 months old. 2 grams stat and 500 milligrams every 2 to 4 hours. The next day, the child was much better. So when you're healthy, the dose is different. When you're not healthy, the dose is different. As far as vitamin D3 is concerned, if I have done a blood level, if they are insufficient or deficient, my standard dose would be 20,000 IU, international units per day for 1 month. That means I use the drops. It's easier, 10 drops for 1 month, 1 bottle will finish. And then I maintain at 6,000 IU. Children, I use 2,000. If I don't have blood results, then I choose between 4 to 6,000, depending on their weight.
Yeah. But how do you know that to balance with the P62 you need for the cells, the autophagy?
Sorry?
But how do you know to balance the ROS? Because it's too much. If it's not too much for the stimulation of the P62.
You mean the amount of vitamin C that we are
Yeah,
taking?
yeah. Isn't that too much?
No, because if you look at a lot of studies where people, a lot of data that we have, people who have lived long enough. There was a study recently that those who take an intravenous infusion of vitamin C, at least 30 grams, at least once in a month, it actually increases the lifespan. So if you take this much of vitamin C, many people who have taken this amount of vitamin C, about 10 grams or more, they don't see, the only benefit was having a healthier life. I can't tell you what dose actually suppresses your P62. I won't be able to tell you. What I will be able to tell you is what is a healthy dose. So it is between 6 to 10 grams. If you want to be very particular, just find out your bowel tolerance.
Okay, thank you very much,
Okay.
Datuk.
Okay. Two questions from Miss Celine Tay. Her first question is, can we test for mTOR? If yes, how do we do it? And her second question is, where do we get AMPK supplements?
mTOR testing that is done usually in the research labs. We don't test it. You need to understand mTOR. You need to understand that you need to keep it under control as you age. So the diet is one of the best ways to control mTOR. And activating AMPK through a healthy diet like intermittent fasting, low carb diet, and activating AMPK through your thyroid hormones and magnesium would also be another way of controlling your mTOR. AMPK is available as a supplement. What I know is from Life Extension. There could be other companies that are selling, but Life Extension has AMPK.
Okay. Somebody asked, Miss Chan, she asked whether you could share Candida protocol with the group.
Oh, sure. Okay. Now, as far as Candida diet is concerned, I told you just now the rule is this: you have to starve the Candida. That means Candida, just like cancer cells, they live only on sugar. Of course, cancer cells at some stage, they are so smart that they can turn protein into sugar. But Candida eats sugar. So all carbohydrates, when we say carbohydrates, they become sugar. So what I tell my patients is, if they can, for the duration of treatment, 0 carbs, that is a keto diet, 0 carbs. Vegetables are allowed. If they cannot do this, the amount of rice or quinoa that they eat should be very, very minimum, very minimum. So some patients won't be able to do this straight away. What you do there is that ask them to go into a low carb diet first, and then you should go into a Candida diet. So once the diet is adjusted, 0 carbs or very little carbs, but sugar, gluten, and dairy must be avoided. And you always tell them when they get sick again, it is because of carbs, stress, or antibiotics, or contraceptive pills, because otherwise they'll get the problems again. So you control the diet, then you have to kill the fungus. Now this is how you kill the fungus. Now if they have had this Candida for a long period of time, people like diabetics or long-standing eczema, psoriasis, autoimmune diseases, what I do is I assume, although I don't do a tissue biopsy, that they are also likely to have non-GIT Candida. That means outside the GIT. So the treatment I give is fluconazole, 150 milligrams daily for 3 to 5 days, followed by itraconazole. In case there are other types of Candida species that will not respond to fluconazole, I give itraconazole also 100 milligrams for 3 to 5 days, one following the other. Now, during this time, at the same time, I start nystatin. Nystatin comes as a capsule of 500,000 international units. You can't give the optimum dose because it causes nausea and some patients have vomiting, and the yeast killing of the yeast actually releases a lot of toxins. So you could have some patients who become a little bit off. They are not well, but it's not serious problem, but you have to prepare them. You have to make sure they understand. So what I do is I start them with 2 capsules QID 4 times a day, preferably in an empty stomach if they vomit with food. And if they have a lot of, if you suspect, or if they have white coated tongue, or if they have recurrent tonsillitis, pharyngitis, then it's very likely, especially CA patients, very likely they have oropharyngeal, esophageal candidiasis. So it's better they open the capsules and gargle, swish around and swallow and drink some water. So it goes, because otherwise if you swallow, it only treats the stomach and down. So you can do that gargling, otherwise swallow the capsule. 2 capsules 4 times a day for a few days, 3 days, then increase to 3 capsules 4 times a day for 3 days. Then the standard dose would be 4 capsules QID. That means 16 capsules a day for 5 to 7 days in most cases, unless they have conditions like very serious eczema or psoriasis, autoimmune diseases with GIT problems. Then I give them that 4 QID for 1 to 2 weeks. And I won't stop in some cases, serious cases. I then ask them to take 3 capsules twice a day for 2 to 4 weeks, so that you get rid of most of the candida. During this treatment, no fruits are allowed because you don't want sugar in the body. So together with fluconazole, and nystatin, you have a choice whether you want to give probiotics during the treatment or you want to actually repair the gut with probiotics and prebiotics after the fungus nystatin treatment. Virgin coconut oil would be very useful, and I give them the organic sodium bicarbonate or baking soda, 1 teaspoon twice a day in an empty stomach. So you stop the fungus, you kill the fungus, and you optimize the immune system. Glutathione, vitamin C, vitamin D3, magnesium, zinc. This is to optimize the immune system. Then most of what you described will just go away. There will be no more bloating, no more reflux, no more gastritis, no more flatus, and vaginal candidiasis, even eczema and psoriasis will start healing. And candida is a very common problem, including children, but I don't give so much of treatment for children because they are given so much of sugar nowadays. So candida is a big problem. So this is how I treat.
Okay, Mr. Sofian has a question to ask you, Datuk.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sati. As usual, thanks, Doc, for the excellent presentations. My first question is, in relation to intermittent fasting, do you think that it will be enough to induce autophagy with only 16 hours of fasting windows, taking into account that not everybody has the same insulin sensitivity or healthy fat cell, BMI, or age?
From the studies that I've seen,
Okay.
your natural cancer cells activity seems to be improved, or they are activated after 14 hours of fasting. So generally you see benefits after 12 hours.
Okay.
And the maximum sets in 14 to 16 hours. So in most of what I've seen, 16-8 or 8-16 would be a sufficient way. If you want to optimize, once a week you practice water fasting.
Water fasting, you mean the whole day, during the whole day?
Whole day.
Okay.
There is another way of fasting. It is called dry fasting, where there is also no water. You drink no water, you eat no food. That's called dry fasting. Please do not try this until you have gone on low carb diet, you have gone on intermittent fasting, water fasting. It is meant for those who have cleansed their system. Otherwise, there's too much of toxins that will be released from the body and you don't have means of excreting them. You need to pass urine. Because you are not drinking, there is very little urine you pass. So that is not good for people who are beginning. And this is the reason why, if you observe what happens during the Muslim fasting month, of course, how it's practiced now, it's wrong. Why many people who are in the fasting month fall sick is because they do dry fasting during the day and they have a feast after Buka Puasa. So that is not good. And what you should do is, if you do water fasting, or those who are already in advanced level of fasting, if you do dry fasting, you still have to break fast with lots of warm water. And make sure you have emptied your bladder. You pass urine first. Then you have detoxified yourself sufficiently. Then you start consuming food. And the other thing to remember is, when you want to break fast after water fasting, the first meal should preferably be light and easy to digest, the easily digestible food. Don't make it a burden to your body. So 16 hours of fasting is sufficient. You can combine with water fasting once a week, and once every 3 months, you can do 3 to 5 days of water fasting.
Okay, Doc. Next question. In one of your slides, you mentioned that chaperone-mediated autophagy will be inhibited by aging. Is that right?
Yes, actually all forms of autophagy will decrease as you age. This is one reason why you need to consume less food and eat for less hours as you age. It becomes more important.
Okay. Actually, my question is, what can we do to maintain and preserve chaperone-mediated autophagy so we can still have the capability to do this kind of autophagy later on in the older age?
Okay. One is, of course, intermittent fasting, water fasting, as I mentioned, and you can take your calorie restriction mimetics. Like you can take metformin, you can take resveratrol, you can take AMPK, berberine, quercetin. You can do a combination. So you can help your system by maintaining healthy levels of autophagy and all forms of autophagy if you practice this.
Okay, understood. Next, with regards to mitophagy, we discussed a lot about autophagy, but I want to ask you with regards to mitophagy, how we can develop new mitochondria or mitochondrial biogenesis. Can we do this mitophagy using calorie restriction, suppressing mTOR, inducing AMPK, the same method, the same pathway as we activate autophagy?
Yes, because autophagy and mitochondrial health are actually very closely related. When you rest the mitochondria, you remember at the beginning of the lecture I mentioned, the way to preserve health is to be able to repair and regenerate. So when you rest the mitochondria, that's where you burn your food for ATP. And in that process, you release a lot of free radicals and that damages mitochondria. So you want to save mitochondria in order for them to have the fusion and fission and formation of new mitochondria or mitochondrial biogenesis. You still have to go through this process of where you eat sufficient. I'm not saying you starve yourself.
Okay.
Eat sufficient. And that a good healthy way of eating is a low carb diet eaten intermittently and in between with regular water fasting, and supplement yourself with supplements that I mentioned. Especially you need your CoQ10, your magnesium, your carnitine. You can add D-ribose. There are supplements for mitochondrial health, and make sure that you have adequate levels of thyroid hormones. If you want, you can even add AMPK. So that way you protect your mitochondria and help in mitochondrial biogenesis.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
My last question is back to glucose ketone index, as you mentioned in one of your slides, that the optimum level is around 1:1 or 4:1. Don't you think?
1:1 to 4:1. So optimum level can vary. The point here is, I'm not sure how often you see if you do urine tests for your patients. We usually look at levels that are normal in the urine. Everything is normal, we say is normal. But you will realize after this lecture that having a small amount of ketones in the body after an overnight fasting, that means they have fasted long enough. So that amount of ketone is sufficient. So if you have 1:1 to 4:1 is still okay.
Yeah, I just did my rough calculation. Let's say if I have blood glucose level, fasting blood glucose level around 80, let's say 80, okay? 80 divides by 18, 1/8, it will be 4.4. And then if I can achieve my ketone levels of 1, because to achieve ketone level of 3, I think it's quite difficult according to my experience. Let's say 1. So 4.4 divided by 1, still 4.4, still above the optimum levels, as you mentioned. But if I can achieve this ketone level of 1, I can assure that I can burn my fat effectively, even though I cannot achieve this optimum level.
Say for example, Sofyan, if you have ketones in your body,
yeah.
Now this is not like when you go for blood test once a year, you fast and you have ketone. I'm talking about dietary change that you practice on a daily basis, intermittent fasting, at least 5 to 6 times a week, and you have these ketones regularly in your body, that will still stimulate autophagy and lipolysis. And it will actually suppress your increase lipolysis and suppress lipogenesis. You still have the effect, but if you really want the ketogenic effect, then you have to practice keto diet, and even the keto diet takes about 6 to 8 weeks for the ketone bodies to be sufficient enough to be beneficial. But we are talking about long-term intermittent fasting, low-carb intermittent fasting. So this long-term, even if you have low levels of ketones on a regular basis, you will still get the benefit.
Well, okay then. Thanks. Thanks,
okay,
Doctor. Thank you.
So we'll take any last question, Sati? Any more? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
so
you.
We see you all again next week. Yeah, 8 p.m. Sati, next week. Sati, you have muted yourself.
Yeah, next week at 8 p.m. The last lecture, and it'll be by Dr. Ron Hunningcake. Okay. And the topic will be oxidative stress and the role of antioxidants in health and senescence. So thank you everyone for joining in tonight, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Datuk, for a lovely presentation.
Thank you, Datuk. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
everyone.
Good night. All of you all good night.
Night.